So just before set 8.5 went live on the PBE servers, there are a few select content creators who were invited to a playtest for this set. And on this playtest, there was a bug that showed this information instead of Janna's weather information. In this video, I'll go through what this means, what we can tell, and what we can infer from this leak. If you don't know what some of this means, Noxus and Piltover are places in Runeterra, the world of League of Legends, which this set seems to be based on, and this was teased back in the November 2022 dev drop in this image. So this playtest seems to have leaked the set mechanic, where units gain bonuses based on which region they originate from. Now, there are those who say that this set will coincide with Arcane Season 2 and feature champions in that series, especially since Noxus was mentioned in Season 1.
Piltover isn't like Noxus. War isn't our first and every recourse.
However, 4 months ago in November 2022, there was a podcast with Mark Merrill, the co-founder of Riot Games, and Shauna Spenley, Riot's global president of entertainment. In this podcast, when asked by Andrew Wallenstein, they said that the script for Arcane Season 2 had just finished and they're expecting the release of Arcane to be in 2024. I'll just play the clip.
Will there be a Season 2?
Yes, we're already in production. It doesn't happen quickly, so I'm just gonna set expectations now.
Hopefully quicker than 6 years.
Yeah, we think
the pipeline exists now, so
yeah,
you know.
we think half the time. So I think in 24 we will have Season 2. That is amazing and made all of us cry. We just finished the scripts.
It just wouldn't make any sense for set 9 to be based on Arcane Season 2, as it could spoil the show if the set is released before it. And I don't think it would make sense for them to move up the release of Arcane just to match a TFT set. And I don't think they would go from this small steampunk world of Zorn and Piltover and delve into the completely different fantasy of the Void just yet. I mean, they haven't even fully explored Zorn or Piltover, with characters like Camille, Oriana, Urgot, or Zac yet to make an appearance. And the Noxian plotline they introduced didn't specifically mention Swain, so who knows if Swain himself will have any presence in Season 2. And surely we'd have a teaser for Season 2 by now, considering the teaser for Season 1 came out 6 months before the release of Arcane. And there may be some people who think that Set 9 may coincide with Riot's MMO that they're working on. But with Ghostcrawler's recent departure from Riot, we learnt again from Mark Merrill that the MMO is still in very early development, and I imagine that at this point, the TFT team has little to no knowledge and information about the MMO, its content, or its plans. So Set 9 doesn't seem to coincide with any other Riot productions to match their theme, setting, or location. I personally think that this set is based on a historical event that happened in the lore of Runeterra, which is the invasion of Ionia. I went into a lot of detail about this invasion in this video here, so check it out if you want to hear more about that. So what can we actually infer from this leak? Well, this set seems to consist of champions or units categorized based on their origins, specifically where they're from. Now this is important to remember and I'll explain why later. Let's start with Noxus. Just so you know, here's all the champions of Noxus, and it's likely that some of these will be in Set 9, especially champions like Darius, Swain and LeBlanc, who are some of the most powerful figures in Noxus. And there are champions like Cassiopeia and Riven who have stories outside of Noxus that are incredibly important and pivotal in the history of Runeterra. Cassiopeia indirectly revived the long-lost Shuriman Empire, and Riven accidentally killed Elder Suma, which Yasuo was framed for and caused him to go on the run. Here's the Piltovian champions. Now this is interesting because we saw literally all of these champions back in Set 6, so I'm curious if the new Piltovian origin will just be a partial rehash of Set 6. And I should probably mention the Zorn champions with the Piltover ones as well, considering how Zorn is a counterpart to Piltover. And again, all of these champions were in Set 6. Personally, I don't think they'll make the distinction between Piltover and Zorn for Set 9, and I think that this origin can include Zornite champions like Urgot, Jinx, and Singed. Now here's the Void champions, but there's a problem. Champions like Kai'Sa or Malzahar do not originate from the Void. They were originally human, but they were influenced or touched by the Void and have mutated from that. Also, the Void isn't an actual place in Runeterra. It's a manifestation of the unknown nothingness that lies beyond Runeterra. But the Void did breach into Runeterra in Icathia, which turned Icathia into a wasteland during the Void War. And then the Voidborn began roaming Shurima after that. And there's a difference between those who originate from the Void and the Voidborn. beings made from warped matter that were built with the instinct of devouring everything. The Voidborn can be created from the void whenever, but they aren't themselves from the void, and that's because the void possesses different laws of reality from Runeterra, so the Voidborn have to create new bodies. Basically, all the champions we know from League are Voidborn, and all of these Voidborn champions have names originating in ancient Shuriman. So the void is actually very ambiguous. Is this referring to the Voidborn, or is it referring to void champions roaming Shurima? Or can it mean any champion that has anything to do with the void? Personally, I'm a bit torn, but I'd go with option 2, because we'd have an actual geographical location for these champions in Runeterra, and we can include popular champions like Malzahar and Kai'Sa, and we can even include champions like Cho'Gath who don't really have much story or lore. But let me know what option makes the most sense to you. Now, it seems that these origins are very similar to Set 7 Mirage and Set 8 Forecaster, where its effects change from game to game, and you can see what variation you have in your game by hovering over this icon. And I think it's actually been implemented by the devs for Set 9, and they're testing it, but they accidentally put it in the playtest for Set 8.5. And they seem to be adding a new consumable, but this one is an upgraded version of the item remover we're used to. And a significant upgrade at that if it's to compete with these insane bonuses from Noxus and the Void. Golden Remover could mean a lot of things. Perhaps the items removed split into components, or the removed items somehow upgrade. As a bit of trivia that could be related, in Piltover there is actually a street that is rumoured to be paved in gold, which is Sidereal Avenue, home to banks like the Epileptic Vaults, which was broken into by Jinx, and the Clockwork Vaults, which was robbed by Graves and TF. An interesting thing to note about all of these bonuses is that they're all geared towards Econ and don't provide any innate board power. So these regions could be Set 9's version of Econ traits, but with different types of Econ. All these bonuses are really powerful early game, and they definitely seem geared for that, but that's also a big problem. That would mean that these traits would almost have little to no value in the late game when you've already fully itemized and 2-starred all your units, and you've already had all your augment selections. What's the point of getting augment rerolls after you've picked your third augment? And surely late game, Piltover would just fill your bench with item removers. Surely there's no way that Piltover and the Void stay like this every game, because you'd rarely ever see these traits played in late game boards. It does seem that this mechanic only includes 3 regions at a time to reduce the perceived complexity of the mechanic. This is very similar to their method of augments and how there could be hundreds of augments, but that doesn't really matter because you only need to consider 3 at a time. So maybe there's only bonuses active for some regions at a time. But wait, that doesn't make sense. Why would they have region bonuses for some units and not others? Will some units just not have their origin bonus active in some games and others will? That sounds kinda complicated and difficult to remember. It's more likely that these regions change their bonus, or the regions with these bonuses change from game to game. But remember how this image appeared in Robin's game? Well, according to this Reddit comment, it also appeared in a Brazilian streamer's game as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find that specific game to verify, but if this comment is true, then we've run into a massive problem. These regions or bonuses are the same from game to game. And there's 2 scenarios we could end up with. The worst case is likely not going to happen, because why would they display this information using this icon if these traits didn't change? There'd be no point because these regions would just be normal traits. I hope we get the best case scenario, and we probably will because it makes the most sense. But maybe I'm just coping. Anyway, how does my list of Set 9 champions change? I still think that Set 9 is based on a historical event, and there's 2 events that it can be: the Void War or the invasion of Ionia. Historically, the Void War was a massive event which involved many champions we know like Zillion, Jax, and even Malphite. And the Void War also subsequently caused the Great Darkin War, which unsurprisingly involved the Darkin that are Aatrox, Kayn/Rast, and Varus. But I'll stick to my guns and say that I still think it's based on the invasion of Ionia because of how global this event was and how many regions were involved. Although my list is definitely lacking Piltovian champions, and looking at this list, I'd easily replace Vhagar with Heimerdinger. I was thinking of including Ezreal as well, because as an explorer, Ezreal has connections and stories all over Runeterra. but I don't know if they'd also put Ezreal in set 9, considering he's in set 8.5 twice. But bar Ezreal and Heimer, the other Piltovian champions wouldn't really fit in my opinion. But yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. There's definitely things I've missed about this. For example, throughout this video, I was under the impression that you could only have one region bonus active at a time, but who knows, maybe you just need one unit from that region to activate that bonus and you could have multiple bonuses active at the same time. Let me know what you think. Is set 9 based on the Void War, the invasion of Ionia, or something else entirely? Or do you reckon I've hit the mark? Anyway, I'd highly recommend watching my video on which champions I think will be in set 9 to bring you up to speed with the lore of the invasion of Ionia. And as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.